Et voilà la dernière après-midi du DevFest 2025. J'espère que tout le monde a pris une petite pause sympa avec les repas qui étaient proposés. Le prochain talk est en anglais, alors je vais basculer en Shakespeare mode. There are many HTML features that have appeared recently. One of them is the customizable select. I could probably sing you a song about it, but I think you'd rather hear from an expert. He comes to us for the Kingdom of Belgium. Please give a warm welcome to Brecht.
Did you have a nice lunch? That's better. I see the slides are not being projected yet. They are visible for me, so there they are, beautiful, fantastic. So, today I am not going to do this in French, terribly sorry, but I am going to use a universal language. More specifically, the universal language of love. It's something that the world needs, right? I see there's a nice little turn-up of people, and today I want to share you a bit of love for CSS. Who here likes CSS? Can I see some hands? Oh yeah, I got a good percentage here. That's awesome. You're the cool kids. Besides my love for CSS, I also want to share to you a bit of love about UI, user interfaces. And I love me some good user interface. I really, really do. And when I talk about the foundation of creating a good UI, I usually narrow it down to 3 main pillars. And there's hundreds and thousands of articles out there on what a good UI should be. But I think these 3 pillars kind of encapsulate the whole thing. I believe at the very least that UI should be controllable, it should be accessible, and it should be stylable. Now, this might be true for our users. But this is also true for us as developers, as authors, as designers, as students, maybe. And there are a lot of well-known UI patterns out there. I am not going to ask you very hard questions right after lunch, just maybe a very simple one. Can you please raise your hand if you ever had to implement one of these before? Come on, that's an easy one, right? Of course, this is pretty much all of you. These are HTML form elements. And look at them. Look how beautiful they are. Each and every one of them is controllable. They are accessible. Not each and every one of them is equally stylable. I'll give you that one, but still they are beautiful in their own little way and a foundation of UI on the web. And today particularly, I want to talk about that little fella out there, which is the select element. Now, when we wanted to style the select element, we always had to rely on some libraries, more specifically some JavaScript libraries. And there's a whole forest full of these libraries out there. And while you were going on your quest trying to find that perfect library, you might be looking at one and thinking, hey, is this library controllable? Can I make this library do what I want it to do? But you might be going a bit further on your quest, looking at the library, wondering, hey, is this library accessible? Does it work with assistive technology? Does it work with keyword navigation? If you're asking that question, you are probably already asking the good question. And last but not least, is this library stylable? Can I fit the branding of my client or my company inside of that UI? Needless to say, like choosing a library, there's usually a bunch of trade-offs. One of them, performance. We just keep piling up library after library, and we wonder why our pages are getting heavy. Maybe it has something to do with it. Or accessibility. We kind of imagine we do npm install, and everything is just going to be fine and dandy. But I can tell you, it's often not. And styling, I mean, I can't count the amount of times that I actually had to use CSS hacks or use important inside of my CSS just to overrule some inline styles set by a library. And I mean, why use JavaScript to style something anyway? I mean, I love JavaScript, but it's not JavaScript's job because styling belongs in CSS, period. That's how it works. But I am here to tell all of you today that things are getting better. And I believe that it's about time too. You already had a little introduction of me, so hi, my name is Brecht. Very nice to be here, and I am a front-end developer currently working at IO, which is a full-service agency in Belgium, Netherlands, and in Scandinavia. Been working there for 8 years. Says something good, I think. Besides my job at IO, I'm also a Google developer expert on web UI and CSS, which has been a fantastic journey. It allows me to come to places like here and get inspired by so many people such as yourselves. It truly is a wonderful experience. But I didn't become a Google developer expert because I'm a natural speaker. Believe it or not, I haven't been doing this for a very long time. Maybe you can tell, maybe you cannot. It's actually because I was writing. I write on my own little blog, utilityband.com, where I write about a variety of things. I write about UX. I write a bit about accessibility. But most and foremost, I like to write about CSS. Because CSS, come on, 3%. It's the most beautiful language on the web, right? Yeah, I got some reactions there. I see you. And besides that, I'm also part of some W3C community groups such as CSS Next and OpenUI. And it's especially that last one that I mentioned, first one on the list, that I want to talk to you about, which is OpenUI. It's about, I think, 3 years ago that I first came in touch with OpenUI. And what I remember is that they had a very beautiful mission statement. So I read about this group, and the first thing was that statement, and it said that OpenUI will allow web developers to style and extend built-in web UI controls. Now, for a CSS nerd as myself, if you ask me, hey, do you want to style and extend built-in web UI controls? I really do. So where do I sign up? Small mention, though, it's not about replacing current web UI. Cannot really do that, cannot really break the web, cannot remove something that is already there. But we sure as hell can enhance it. So what exactly is OpenUI? As I said, it's a W3C community group. It's an open group. Anyone can join this, whether you are a developer, designer, student, as long as you're a nice person. It's pretty easy, right? And we do research around the different parts, states, and behavior of current UI out there. And then we try to map these things, and we try to find that common ground, and we think about how we want to see these things standardized in the browser. So then we write explainers, telling how we want to see this, and then these things get picked up by the HTML and CSS working group, for example, and then they get turned into specs, and so a new web standard is born. That's a very long story short, because these things tend to take a bit longer than 2 weeks, if you know what I mean. But before I get into the whole main dish on select elements, I kind of do want to highlight a few things that actually came from this group, because I think it's important you know about this. And one of the things, maybe you've heard of this, is the popover API. See some people nodding? Okay, cool. This is not going to be a talk about popovers, but I do want to show you that we now have a popover ability in every major browser, and that soonish we might get a hover equivalent for that as well. So just to give you an example of where we're going with the web, what you are seeing in the next video is actually a complete popover system on hover and on click. This is just using HTML and a bit of CSS. There is no JavaScript going on what you see here behind me. It's a great time to be in web UI if I see these kinds of things, and it really makes me happy. Another thing that came from OpenUI is invokers, also known as invoker commands. Now, there's a lot of things that you can do with invokers, but I want to highlight one thing, because we already can open popovers with HTML, so we kind of want to have the same thing for dialogues as well. So this is actually a dialogue being fired just by using HTML. A pretty handy feature indeed, but it's just these little updates that I think are so important. Invoker commands are not everywhere available, but they are in Safari Technology Preview and in Firefox Nightly behind the flag, so it's getting a bit of traction, so I'm really happy that's coming. It's coming. I'm looking forward to this. But why am I giving you a talk about selects and mentioning popovers and modals? Well, It's because there's one little fundamental thing about the browser that I want you all to be acquainted about, first of all, which is called the top layer. Who has heard of the top layer before? Some hands? All right, not too many people. I'll break it down for you. So what happens when you, for example, open a popover in HTML, this happens. You click on the button, and then there sort of is a transparent sheet of paper that comes on top of your DOM. And inside of that transparent sheet of paper, the little popover is drawn. You can take this very literally. This top layer is outside of your document flow. It's outside of your DOM. It is a sibling to your actual HTML element. It lives outside. It lives on its own. And it is always on top. And this makes perfect sense, because popovers and dialogues, they should always be on top. No more z-index 9999. Yeah, I've done that one as well. And every popover gets a backdrop pseudo element, which is a handy thing as well. But let me just really show you what happens when you open a popover. You can see in your DevTools that the top layer gets created in an instant. It goes flashingly fast, super fast. And when I remove that popover, that top layer gets destroyed right away as well. This happens in an instant, and you can actually see this. One more time, opening it up. And also pretty handy, you get the little reveal badge there that you can click, and it jumps to where the popover originated from. Handy feature. Do check it out in your DevTools. But then there's a problem, like how do you transition something that gets instantly created and instantly destroyed? How do you animate this kind of thing? How do you transition this kind of thing? Luckily nowadays, you don't have to use on-transition and event listeners in your JavaScript. You can just do this with CSS. So this is quite a big chunk of code. I am going to break it down so you know exactly what is going on here. So by default, for example, my popover is going to have an opacity of 0. It's going to have a negative translate of about minus 30 pixels vertically, like a little bit offset to the top. I'm going to transition a few properties, such as opacity, translate, overlay, and display. I think opacity and translate make sense, and overlay is the thing that you will need for that top layer. We're also going to transition the display property. Now, you might be thinking, like, hey, you cannot transition a display property. It's not something that we can do. Well, we actually can nowadays, by adding a new property value pair named transition behavior allow discrete. This allows you to transition discrete properties. Now then, when that popover is open, I would place that opacity to 1 and that translate to 0. Let's already take a little look at what this would bring. I have a nice little popover. It opens up, but it already fades away pretty slowly. But it's still entering rather harshly. That's not what I wanted, right? I want a soft fade in as well. So why is this happening with this bit of code? I'm going to tell you all a little story, and I want you all to imagine you are that popover. You can close your eyes. You don't have to, but feel free to. So here you are, having a beautiful day inside of the DOM. Next to you is your beautiful friend, the button. Hey, button, how are you doing? Nice day. And on the other side, you have a nice little span. You don't know exactly what he does, but he's there. You like him. It's a cool guy. It's a cool guy. So you are chilling here, and then all of a sudden, somebody taps on that little button, and you get thrown outside of that DOM, thrown right into that top layer. You have no idea where you came from. You have no idea who you are. You probably have the biggest identity crisis in HTML history. So here you are. What's happening? And this is where we come in. This is where we come in as authors, as developers, because we can say to the popover, like, hey, little popover, don't worry. I got your back, man. Got your back. I'm going to tell you where you started from. I'm going to tell you where you originated from. I am going to tell you your starting style. And this is where starting style comes in, because that shows the popover what happens right when it enters the top layer. Now, some people might have already saw something here. I first said that this popover has a negative 30 pixels, and then I'm setting the starting style to a positive 30 pixels. So I am lying to that popover. But it actually makes perfect sense, and it's the beauty on this system, because that allows me to do the following. I can make it appear from the bottom to the center, and make it disappear to the top. One more time, coming on from the bottom, and going away to the top. It's beautifully simple and elegant, and it's such a nice little UX touch. Okay, so probably should stop about the popovers now, or maybe just one more, just for the fun. How about this one? It's a popover rocket ship. Right? So much fun, right? And you can actually have a bit of fun with these animations. You can interrupt them and make the popover go back up. It's so much fun. Transition behavior and add starting style is available in every major browser. Do note there's a little bug still in Firefox at the moment, but you can perfectly use this today as a progressive enhancement. You don't have to hold back. It will work. So feel free to check that out. So time to start with the main dish, styling select elements. The select element, very controllable, very accessible, not really stylable. We cannot style little list box thingy out there. It's something we can do. And it's one of those where we just add a whole bunch of dependencies just to style this. That's wrong. But now there is a way. There's a way with CSS that we can do an opt-in to style a select element. By setting select and picker select to have an appearance of base select. This will opt you in to styling a select element, and also as a progressive enhancement. Now, before I continue this talk, I kind of do want to note that please always label your form elements. I'm not going to repeat this in the whole process, but be a nice person for accessibility reasons. Label your form elements, be a nice person. That's being said. So how can we use a customizable select today? Because we gotta say here, it's currently only available in Chrome and Edge, but I'm gonna show you how you use this today. And this is how we would do this. So we can select and picker select to have an appearance of base select. That's the foundation. That's how you opt in. And a lot of DevRel people will probably tell you that you can do something like this. You add a nice little feature query in that side of that select, checking if the feature exists in the browser, and then you can set select and picker select to have an appearance of base select. But I don't completely agree with this. I think we should do a bit more, because I live in a real world with real clients, and I cannot just ship a plain-looking select to Firefox and Safari people and a styled select to Chromium people. Kind of need to keep everybody happy here. So what I would suggest is that you do something like this. Also add an appearance none on your select by default. And I'll show you why, because that would result in the following. On the left-hand side, you can see the customizable select element. And on the right-hand side, you can see the select with an appearance of none. So let's focus on the appearance none one for a second. Let's focus on that one, because that makes things a lot easier. So we can just throw some basic properties at it. I'm just going to set some flex positioning, some justify content. It's like not really important what I'm doing in there, maybe just the background, because what I'm doing here is giving it a nice little background color, giving it a nice little arrow SVG, and place that to the right. It's stuff that we could do already. It's stuff that's been there for quite some time, and I'm quite ignoring the feature query right now. We'll get back to that one in just a bit, meaning I can already create something like this. Only thing is, when you click on it in Firefox, But at least it's already styled a little bit. And for some people, I might be able to ship this. OK, it looks a bit styled, and it's a bit boring when you open it. But sometimes that might just be enough. But that gives me the chance to then go back to the fun stuff, because a customizable select opens up a whole bunch of opportunities for us. We get a whole bunch of pseudo-elements and other yum-yums that we can play around with. One of them is the picker icon pseudo-element, which is the little arrow thing you see there on the right. Another one is the checkmark pseudo-element, which shows you which option is checked. Checked also being a pseudo-class for an option in there. And then we, of course, have our picker select, which is the nice little bounding box around our options. Pretty beautiful, pretty elegant. So I can style this. So starting from the previous example, there's a whole bunch of code inside of that select, but inside of that feature query, I would, for example, set the background to none again for that select. But you might be wondering, like, why do you do this? You already had the arrow, just keep the arrow. Well, I'm going to place it inside of that picker icon now and set the background image there for better select elements, because that gives me a chance to flip it. And I love flipping things. Because for the open state, I can rotate that picker icon to a 180 degrees, which is once again one of those little fine and beautiful UX enhancements. Here is that customizable select open then. It kind of goes to the top, the arrow, and I think that's just beautiful. And then we go on. We start styling our picker select, which is the nice little bounding box, keeping it very simple for this first demo. Just a nice little border in there, a little bit of a margin, just keeping things neat. Let's not rush things. It's a nice little border around that list box. Very simple, beautiful pink border. But then a lot of fun stuff can happen, because now we have a chance to actually style our options. We can give them a bit of a border, we can add a hover state, a focus state, an active state. We can style the checked item a bit differently. And in this case, I am going to hide the check mark, because I'm just going to style the background of the checked option. It's a bit of a choice. In short, by styling my options a bit, it can look like something like this. Let's maybe see it in action really quick. So here I'm clicking it, and I can just select this beautiful option now. But the beauty of this whole system is that this is still an accessible select. I can use my keyboard navigation. I didn't even have to worry about it. This is beautiful UI out of the box without actually having to do crazy hacks or other crazy stuff. It's working beautifully. But there's more. So when I first started talking about the customizable select element, a lot of developers came to me and they were asking, like, what about flags? I want flags inside of my selected options. Now, I don't know what the issue is with developers and flags, but I am not going to do flags today. I'm going to do Pokeballs, because those are fun as well. So now with the opt-in, we can actually add images inside of our options and display them. Here I'm adding an image of a Pokeball, an image of a Great Ball, and an image of an Ultra Ball. So pretty much the same styling that I did before. It's a little bit different styling, but it's pretty much the same select. I created a demo like this, which is a Pokeball selector, and it has some items inside of it. It's very pretty. But it's not perfect yet, right? Because we kind of want a Pokeball in the closed state of the select as well. That's what we want. So somebody figured out that if you put a button inside of a select element, browsers nowadays would completely ignore it. They don't care. But that gave us the window with the opt-in to create something. So when you have that button, inside of that we have a new element that we can use called the selected content. The selected content will hold the contents of your checked option. So those contents go inside of your selected content. Meaning that if I add this little snippet to my previous Pokeball selector, it looks like this. Pretty sweet, right? I think that's so much fun. But let's take it one step further, shall we? I told you that this is cloning the contents of your checked option, also including the span with the class text in there. That's also coming inside of the selected content, which means that if I go inside of my CSS and I would choose to visually hide text inside of the selected content, I would, by the way, please do it visually, because display none, accessibility, hide it visually, it's better, kind of want to mention this. But if I would do this, it allows me to create an experience such as this, where you don't see the text at all, but I do have items that I can select. So just a quick pulse check. So after lunch, talks very hard. Is everybody still with me? Yeah, still following? All right, awesome. Let's crank it up a notch then. Oh, because I love experimenting with the customizable select, people. I really do. And what I'm going to show you next is a whole bunch of experiments that I did with it. And I'm probably going to slap a lot of like crazy CSS stuff in there, and I cannot explain everything in the time that I have. I will be at the Google booth later on, so you can find me there if you want more detailed information. But I'm also sharing my demos at the end of this presentation, so you can fiddle around with them, play around with them. But I kind of want to show you like what you can do with it, and also take you a little bit on my thoughts behind it, because I think that's probably worth a bit more than just showing you demo after demo in details. Because one of the first things that I thought about, I've shown you the top layer. Guess what else is inside of that top layer? The list box of a select element. Because the list box, just as popovers and dialogues, the picker select should always be on top. And what can you use to anchor something to a select if that picker is inside of a top layer? Because I had the idea that if I open this up, I want to move those options right in the center of my select and then play around with it, do some fun stuff with that. Which is why I chose to work with the anchoring API in CSS. So this was the basic select idea. It's a select, it has a button inside of it with selected content, and I have an extra div inside of my picker select. You can do that. It's pretty handy sometimes. Inside of that, I added a whole bunch of options. For example, a health potion in there. I'm trying to stay a bit on theme here, and I added a whole bunch of options in here. So what I did was, inside of my select, the picker select would use anchor positioning to place the top to the center, the left to the center, and then translate -50 to actually make it on top of that select. Now what I did next is quite a lot to explain, but I did a bit of mathematics. I did, because I wanted to create this kind of effect where everything would just fan out and it would be a nice radial select. And then I was like, let's start off with some calculations. So I had my option size of 80 pixels. They should be 80 pixel sized. I have a circle in which I want to place them, which was 320 pixels. And then I did a whole bunch of calculations. I'm not going to go in detail on these, but what's actually just happening here is that I am just calculating where each item should be based on its position inside of a circle. I'm also using some newer CSS stuff in here, such as sibling count and sibling index. If you haven't heard some of those, do check them out. They are really, really, really cool. But the final idea is that I would use that transform using starting style again. So it would start from a transform 0, and then suddenly it would get all those transform, and it would rotate those items right to where they belong. In short, by using a bit of anchoring and just some clever mathematics, really, I was able to create this little fella out here, which is a beautiful, simple potion selector. It's so much fun to play around with. And the beauty of this is still an accessible select. You can use keyboard navigation. You don't have to worry about it. It is working beautifully. Okay, it involves a bit of maths, but it's the fun part, right? I'm really not good at maths. That's a joke. I'm really bad at it. But okay, maybe taking a step back, because anchoring is already a lot. I was going to reuse anchoring, but then I thought, like, radial selects, maybe I should try to do something with sticky, position sticky. So for this demo, I had a very simple select. Just a bunch of emoji. It's a little emoji picker. Also using an extra wrapper items. I'm not even using selected content for this one. Now in CSS, there is a new way that you can animate widths. It's the thing that I add in my root there. It's something that I've already added in my CSS resets for browsers that support it, which is interpolate size allow keywords. This allows you to animate, for example, from a width of 64 pixels to a width auto. So you can transition to a auto keyword, which is a very handy thing. And I relied on that for this demo, because it was also already in Chromium. So my select and my picker select would both be like a circle of 64 pixels, and they would be on top of each other, once again, using anchoring. You can see that right there, by setting my inset block to and anchoring that way. I clipped the overflow, and what I did then was I would transition that width. Once again, I can do this now from 64 to auto. Same, once again, using that display property and overlay property for top layer and transitions. And then what I would do is I would set the width to auto with a starting style of 64 pixels, combining a bit of all these things we've seen before together. And then there's a little trick, a little fun part. What I did, inside of my option, I set my checked option to be position sticky. And I chose that this should be placed on the inline end because my select was opening horizontally. So what that resulted in, by placing this at the end, is that I could create this little fun thing. So here you open up the select, and you kind of dragged the checked option into the middle. It's a little fun, but a cool effect that you can really draw it into the center. And this is actually just using position sticky inside of the picker, which I think is a really fun way to play around with selects. But OK, I had position sticky, I had anchoring, and then I was thinking, like, I should do something with has, because has is probably one of the most fun selectors that we ever had. And for this, I'd like to take you back to my life of a little while ago. I am very bad at maths, I've already told you that, and I'm also very bad at drawing. So at the end of last year, I decided like I should start drawing a little bit. And I used to draw as a 7-year-old, and now I'm drawing like a 9-year-old. I call that progress. I am really happy with myself. Oh, thank you, that's beautiful. That's beautiful, thank you so much. And then I saw this little dumpling basket that I've drawn, and was like, I can create this in CSS. I should be able to do this in CSS. So for this, I took some inspiration from Julia Miusen, who is one of the greatest CSS artists ever. Do check out her work, really awesome stuff. And she once gave a beautiful quote saying that you can mess up coloring, light source, and animations, but a skeleton is the basis of each animation. So I use a technique from Julia called skeleton, where you would actually recreate a skeleton out of HTML, in this case for my dumplings. So what I did, you see the nice little select in there. Inside that I have a dumpling container, I have a dumpling. A dumpling has some top pleats, it has a face. Inside of the face, it has some eyes, a left eye, a right eye, and I have a whole bunch of more features and more dumplings and a basket. To make a long story short, it was a select of about 114 lines of HTML and 700 lines of CSS, but hey ma, no images, and I was able to create this little fella. So he's sitting in his basket, and when you press 2, he's like, oh, there's a second one coming in, so much fun. And then when you press the third, they're both going like, whoa, dude. I thought it was a fun little experiment. I'm not sure if I'll ever be able to sell something like this. It was really a lot of effort, to be honest. But I just had so much fun creating this. It's so cool that these things are available. This is still an accessible select, just so you know. It still works pretty nice. So what did I use has for? Well, a bit cheeky here, not that special, to be honest. What I did was I used has to check which value was currently checked. And based on that, you do a whole bunch of transformations, like popping one dumpling up, bumping the other one up. And I did pretty much the same thing for the facial features, where I did the same thing, like, hey, is option 1 checked? The eye needs to be this large, the mouth needs to be this large, etc. That's where I use has for pretty much the only thing. A fun experiment, though. But then I kind of wanted to take it another step further. I was thinking, like, I should do something with scroll snapping, because scrolling is cool. I love scrolling. Can I maybe ask, are there any people familiar or aware of the gaming franchise Monster Hunter? Can I see some hands? All right, I see a few. Right on. So I wanted to create this, which is a potion selector, well, an item selector that you can see in the Monster Hunter franchise. I wanted to really gamify this experience. So the idea was that this should rely on keyboard navigation in a very cool way. So what I did, pretty much the same select as you've seen before. The only big difference here is that I had a nice little frame div out there, which would cover the frame in here. Now, in that select, like, items get really small, and the item in the center gets bigger, and that one is the item you are going to select. So I had to do a few tricks for that. So first of all, I display flexed my items so they would be horizontal. I added a bit of a scroll snap in there, so each item would be snapped in the center more specifically. And then I hide the scroll bar and stuff like that. But then I used container queries, more specifically scroll state queries, which are still experimental, but it did give a nice little touch in here. And I could actually set the scale of 0.6, but only when it's in the middle and snapped, then it could really rise up in that scale. Now, combining this and a little bit of JavaScript, where I said, like, hey, every time an item on scroll snap change is snapped, I want you to move the focus state on that option, meaning that if then you press enter, that is the one you will select. This is what it looks like. So you can open it up, you can use your arrow keys, and you kind of select the option, then you press enter, and you have your item. I even went a little bit further by adding some more JS in there because I really wanted to have a nice drag ability in there as well. And I also added a few arrows because single pointer modality is important for accessibility. Speaking of, is this one still accessible? I got to be honest with you, maybe. So this is about context. If you would throw this on your everyday website, a user would not expect a select to behave that way. So in that sense, not really accessible. However, if you are creating a browser game, then UI kind of needs to be learned anyway. So in that case, you might get away with it in order if you give enough ways to navigate the kind of thing you're creating. So maybe, depending on context. But I also went a bit further with scroll markers. So because CSS carousels were becoming a thing, and I was like, I gotta do something with carousels. And I thought, maybe I can use a CSS carousel and put that carousel inside of a select. So that's what I tried to do. So here I have a div class carousel. And inside of that, I have a data image with a sunny.svg, which is a little SVG in there. I'm using that same one inside of my image as well. Each of these options is wrapped with a div that has a data image. So what I did next was anchor a whole bunch of stuff to that select, but also here at the bottom using the new attribute capabilities of Chrome, where I can read that attribute data image and place that one inside of a scroll marker of my carousel. All of this combined, I was able to create a carousel inside of my select element by just using HTML and CSS. Now, I am going to be honest, I might have taken that one a little too far, but I do have some accessibility concerns on this one. The keyboard navigation seems a bit off, and screen readers seem to ignore the scroll markers here, which might actually be a good thing. So that is why I kind of want to show you anyway, because it's not always because you can that you should. But in this case, I thought it was definitely worth the experiment to at least show this to people, like, hey, you can really take this far. And who knows, maybe in the future things like this will be fixable. I sure as hell hope so. And then there's one more that I'd like to show you, which is option groups. I haven't really spoken of option groups yet, which are a thing that we have in select elements. So here I created a select, and inside of that I had option groups for each season. One for winter, one for spring, one for summer, one for fall. And inside of that option groups, I went with a bit of an emoji theme again, but just adding a snowflake, a Christmas tree, and some gifts in there, nicely grouping these together. So then I thought that if I use CSS, I can use an after pseudo element now on my option group and read the value in there. I could place that on top of my select at different places, and then when that option group is hovered, or has an option inside of it that is hovered, or has an option inside of it that has focus visible, then I can set that text to have an opacity of 1. Meaning that I could create a radial select once again, but here actually showing which one is active, which option group, by actually hovering over it. A more down-to-earth example for this, which you could perfectly use today completely, is something like this. What if you would have a menu, and you can open your select, and you make that select full screen, and then you have your option groups to say, for example, it's seafood, it's vegetarian, or whatever you want to, and you can select some items such as that, which is a nice way for a restaurant menu for ordering. And if you would look at a browser that doesn't support the customizable select, well, it still looks like this. It's still pretty usable. It's a little bit less fancy, but this is quite okay. This is okay. This is fine. And there's one more thing coming up that the Chrome team has been tinkering with that you can now find in the experimental web platform features inside of Chrome Canary. So maybe you want to create a select for music genres. But usually people, at least I do, like more than one music genre. So in that case, you need to select multiple. So how about using the multiple attribute once again on the select element? Also using the opt-in. In Chrome Canary, well, it is, I was able to create this by setting my options as a grid. And then I can just multiple select all these items inside of it, play around with it, and it's actually pretty simple. It's just a grid, right? But my options are just a grid now, and it works beautifully. So something that to look forward to as well. But do remember that everything in OpenUI is still a work in progress. We are constantly trying to improve stuff, trying to create new stuff that we can use as web standards today. These are just a few of them that we are currently working on. And I'd like to pinpoint one of them, which is the multi-handle range sliders. It's something very dear to me. Now, I'm just a developer, but I am trying to push this one forward a little bit, and I do want to show you this as a sort of a premiere. So I created a prototype of this, because I kind of want to have more than one thumbs on a slider. Maybe we even want more than 2 thumbs on a slider. I don't know. You be the judge of that. And I think we should be able to style the segments, style the thumbs. We should be able to show values in there and maybe anchor those values on our thumbs, that we can drag them, play around with them, create beautiful, user-friendly experience without having to think about accessibility too much. Oh, and it should always be backwards compatible as well. So this is why the API currently looks like this, where you would have a range group that would wrap a whole bunch of items. So you can name your one thumb, you can name your other thumb, so it would still be an accessible range slider, and it would be backwards compatible. Now, I cannot give you the full explanation on this, but if you would be so kind, you could check out this little QR code, and it shows you the full explainer of what we're trying to do. You can play around with that demo that I just showed you here really quickly, the idea that's behind it, the accessibility thoughts, but we need you. I cannot ship this feature. The only way that this feature gets shipped is if people make noise about it, if people talk like, hey, we want this in browsers, I want to have this. Then maybe somebody, I don't know, Chrome, Apple, they might send an engineer like, hey, I want to do this. And then these things can get created a bit faster. So that's what I'm really hoping for this feature. You can get involved with OpenUI. You can go on our Discord. You can go on our GitHub. You can just create demos and break stuff. Please do, because that helps us fix bugs. Just go to openui.org. You find all the information there. And I know that a styled select, it's not going to change the world. It's probably not going to make me rich either. But I do believe that a bit of beautiful UI can put a smile on a person's face. And the smile can be priceless. That's my daughter, 6-year-old, playing around with my demos, having a smile on her face. I think that's precious. A smile can be priceless. And I know by heart that UI should be controllable. It should definitely be accessible. And I love the fact that it's becoming more and more stylable. But if there is one more thing I'd like to give all of you on this Friday afternoon as a little reminder, take this home with you. You are allowed to have a bit of fun. It's not just sprint boards and Jira tickets. Create some fun stuff. Create weird stuff. Create stupid stuff. Because I truly, truly believe that the web is supposed to be fun. So next time, when you are creating a little demo on the side, maybe you'll think of this presentation and you'll decide like, hey, maybe I'm going to pop it, invoke it, or maybe even select it. But whichever you do, just make sure that you love it. Thank you.